So I was reflecting during the break between services, and several folks had some really lovely conversations with me. See, when I came in here this morning, I was, to use a word I didn't use this morning, I was gobsmacked, which is a great word, by the refuge this place is. You're in it every week, so maybe you don't see it. I see it. And during the break, I did a little bit of meditation. I was asking myself, so why am I having this? I mean, partly it is I get the love, right? And some of you have told me that. But I realized, Stephen Levine says, that he's now passed, but Stephen Levine says that life bruises us. It's the nature of life. And we get bruised, and if we don't attend to the bruising, it builds up. And it was only during the break, as I was reflecting on how I'm being affected this morning, that I realized I've been doing a lot of very difficult work in national suicide prevention work and in opioid abuse prevention work. And it's heavy work. And it was only in that reflection during the break, it's like, oh, no wonder I so appreciate the refuge you have created for me here. So that goes to all of you. And it's like, that's what I was experiencing. No wonder I have tears in my eyes. The world asks much of us sometimes. Hence the subject today, finding beauty in a broken world. It's stolen from Terry Tempest Williams. If you don't know her, she's a magnificent author. And the phrase that follows that is, so finding beauty in a broken world is creating beauty in the world we find. And of course, this is a representation of that in so many ways. And yet there's a whole nother way to think about this. Because, we can put art on the walls, which I love art. We can plant gardens. We can create beautiful spaces. We can do beautiful, beautiful music, which you all deserve so much credit for. But, ultimately, this creation of beauty in the world is an inside job. I mean, that's where it's found. And there are several ways we can think about that. One is we can think of a mental treatment, some might call it. We can reframe. And I was talking with a friend recently who loves the physical world, the natural world, and he was talking about he was ruing that wolves are gone from much of the natural world now. They've been exterminated. And we had this lovely conversation because, you lose an apex predator like a wolf, and what happens is the coyote just multiplies, literally in your woods around here. And then we talked further, and he goes, but they eat up our puppy dogs and kitty cats. And I go, well, yes, they do. Isn't that beautiful? Because your dachshund is surrendering its life to the life of the coyote. And that you can't, Richard and I were talking before we started this morning about how you can't escape the death equation. It's part of the beauty design. So I can do a mental reframe. I can take the wolf and the coyote and all this, and I can go, oh, look, it's part of a beautiful design. It couldn't be otherwise. So that's like a mental treatment. I can do an emotional or psychological treatment by telling you about my friend Kathleen, who works in the world dealing with fetal alcohol syndrome. If you don't know that particular language, what happens is mothers who drink during pregnancy can injure their babies, and they're one of the most reviled groups of people in the world because nobody likes women who hurt their babies. So what you need to know about Kathleen is that she now works nationally and internationally creating safe spaces for women who have born children with fetal alcohol syndrome. And she's magnificent at it, and she's 35 years clean and sober herself, and her whole life is dedicated to that body of work. And she's still reviled. Still. But here's what you have to know about her story to see the wholeness of the beauty. You see, when she was 13 years old, growing up in a violent household, she needed an escape. Alcohol saved her life. So did the boy she met. Because of her upbringing, she knew nothing about sexual and reproductive health, and she got pregnant. And that boy and that experience and the alcohol cumulatively saved her life. It's a beautiful design. It's ugly. It's a beautiful design. She wouldn't be doing the magnificent work she's doing. And if you sat with her and looked her in the eyes and talked to her, you would be dumbfounded by what that whole process has done to her. And so there it is. And her daughters are well cared for now today, at least in part, because of her work and the program she has helped create. And there it is. Would I wish fetal alcohol syndrome on any child? Of course not. But when you understand the nature of addiction and violence in the household and the need for people to find some refuge, and if it's a crazy refuge and it works and it keeps them alive, then that's a beautiful thing. It's part of the beauty of the whole darn design. And that's not the way we think of it. So Paula mentioned I do a lot of forgiveness work. Well, I mean, in the end, we got to forgive all of that. Of her, of you. I mean, there's not a person who ultimately takes this stage to deliver these messages who doesn't have some awful, messy story to tell. Now, of course, we bypass a lot. You all know this, right? You all know about bypassing? Who here doesn't know about bypassing? I do. So, okay, none of you. All right, so here's what bypassing is. Bypassing is we try and find some way to avoid dealing with the ugly in the hopes that we can reside in the beauty without dealing with the ugly, and there's no evidence that's true. If we had Carl Jung here, Carl Jung would tell us the way you find light is in the darkness, the shadow work. And yet we will do everything we can to avoid it because it hurts. When I talked at the beginning about realizing what I've been carrying, doing what I think is some pretty hefty lift work for me, it's been layering up. It's a lot. Life can be a lot. It bruises us. Stephen Levine said that it bruises us so much that it calluses the heart and hardens the soul. And the work of recovery from life. I'm a recovering alcoholic too, so that's part of my story, part of my dark path. It all adds up to this getting past that stuff, not by avoiding it, not by trying. Some of you probably know Pema Chodron, the great Buddhist teacher. Yes, some of you are nodding your heads. Her greatest line is, the purpose of meditation is to lean into the sharp points and let them impale you so you can be healed. And everybody goes like, I don't want that path. I'm not down with that at all, man. I'm going to go find some fruity, wonderful, rainbow-filled place to inhabit where I don't have to deal with darkness. I'm going to move to Hawaii, right? And then the volcanoes blow up and you go like, oh, I can't even escape it here in paradise. So we can mentally reframe. Absolutely. We can absolutely emotionally and psychologically reframe by going to those places. But the more important, ultimately, and powerful reframing is a spiritual reframe, which is the whole point of New Thought. It's the whole point of unity. It's far more than a beautiful space. And I would never diss a beautiful space. What New Thought, what spirituality is designed to do is to take us to a different place. And I had an experience some years ago that changed me forever. I was out in the mountains. I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was out in the mountains. I was off having a spiritual experience, because that's what I did at the time. And I found a never-before-discovered grotto, for me anyway, a cave stuck in the end of a cavern, of a canyon. And it was clearly holy ground. It was clearly, you could feel the aura. Not just see the aura, you could feel the aura. The same thing that you all have had. I mean, it's been on a beach or the Grand Canyon or the Redwood. It's someplace magnificent. And I was like, it's like, I'm staying. I've found my bypass. I'm staying. But the world called me back. And on Monday morning, I had to drop my car off for repairs, which is also part of the beautiful design, by the way, right? Cars break, so there you go. Well, I had to walk into downtown, and I turned a corner to go up a particular street, an avenue that runs right into downtown, and it's an asphalt pavement with concrete sidewalks and stucco-covered block walls with stunted plum trees along the way. And I turned, and I'm just trudging along with my backpack on because I do urban trekking, and it's part of what I do. And suddenly, I was gobsmacked, to use that word again. Suddenly, that asphalt, that concrete, those stucco-covered walls lit up with the same aura of the grotto in the mountains. And my first voice in my head was, this can't be so. It's asphalt, for God's sake. But that was the lesson. You see, the holy ground wasn't dependent on space, location, time, or circumstance. The asphalt was as filled with the Spirit as was the grotto. And I saw it and I felt it, and it changed me in a profound way. Because I realized that that line from Moses about removing your shoes, the ground upon which you stand is holy, didn't have to do with the ground. It had to do with the state of mind, the presence in that moment, in that space, and that it was with us always. That it's not conditional on a different elected official. It's not contingent on reversing climate change. It's not contingent on trying to stamp out homelessness, addiction. That's not the proposition. That doesn't mean we don't work in those spaces. It means they're holy ground. When I'm side by side with the young woman who is telling me the story, she's a heroin addict, and she's telling me the story that she has found out her 17-year-old daughter is now a heroin addict, and her heart is broken, it's holy ground. I lean into the holy ground now. I don't pretend like it's supposed to be different. It's not. It's that moment, that space. And a friend of mine who of all, I collect these interesting connections in the world. I have an evangelical friend out in West Texas who says that that is us being scoured by the Holy Spirit. Very evangelical language. And yet, it is true to her experience as well. Hence Pema Chodron's message of leaning into the sharp points. And it doesn't mean we don't need this refuge. We do. And we need this beautiful art and beautiful gardens and lovely fall days and beautiful clothes. It's all wonderful. But if all we do is take up residence in the pretty, pleasant things, we're actually losing the opportunity to be transformed. Because it's the dark stuff that will change us forever in the most profound, inexplicable ways. But we have to go there. We have to learn a set of practices, spiritual practices, that let us work with difficult stuff. And yes, celebrate the joy, which, by the way, is harder to be with than dark stuff. Some of you have had this experience, I'm sure, where you've just been lit up with spirit, the spiritual orgasm, whole body trembling thing, right? And you're like, I can't do this. And Pema would say, yeah, lean into that too. Lean into that too. It's too hard to be with. So that's the message. Finding beauty in a broken world is you, us, we. Finding it there, not by altering it. Peace doesn't come by the elimination of violence. Peace comes in the violence. And that's hard to even fathom. But once you start finding it, it allows you to sit and be with people and things in ways that change people's lives. And that's what they tell you. They tell you things like, I don't feel judged. I didn't feel you trying to change me. I didn't feel you trying to fix things. You just bore witness, and I am better for it. That is the work of Spirit. I sometimes call myself a midwife, which I really love midwives. Because the midwife claims no credit for the creation of the baby, no credit for the birthing process, no credit for the birth itself, no credit for the baby. At best, the midwife wipes the brow of mama, catches the baby, wipes the baby, and gives the baby to mama. That's the work we're asked to do. To catch your baby, not that baby, you, the birthing of you, your spiritual being, and to hold it up and let you behold it and receive it. It changes everything. So I'd like you to close your eyes for a little meditation. Stolen with the courtesy of the Navajo people, called the blessing ceremony. In beauty I walk. I walk, beauty before me, beauty behind me. I walk. Beauty above me. I walk. Beauty surrounds me. I walk. And all is beauty. I walk. And breathe. Richard Rohr says, everything belongs. Nothing can be excluded. Right here, right now, always, every right here, right now. Beauty. So it is. So it shall be. Always. And with a deep breath, said my wisest teacher, you cannot not be God's kid. One more deep and beauty-filled breath. Opening your eyes, wiggling your toes, saying thank you in whatever way you say thank you. Take the beauty with you. It's there whether you do or not. Namaste.